Baik, bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
The human digestive system is very complex and has evolved over millions of years. It basically consists of the rectum, the large intestine, the small intestine, the pancreas, the stomach, also called gaster and ventriculus, and the liver with the gallbladder. The esophagus is also part of this system, as well as various salivary glands near the mouth. First, the food is broken up in the mouth by the teeth and then mixed with saliva.
Akan kita olah menjadi bentuk yang lebih kecil, yaitu dengan bantuan gigi. Dan di dalam mulut ini terjadi pencernaan secara mekanik oleh gigi dan pencernaan kimiawi oleh enzim amilase. Dan di dalam mulut terdapat gigi, lidah ataupun kelenjar ludah. Nah, kelenjar ludah ini berfungsi untuk melarutkan makanan dan memudahkan menelan. Dan di dalam mulut terdapat 3 pasang kelenjar, yaitu glandula parotis di dekat telinga, glandula submaxillaris di rang bawah, dan glandula sublingualis di bawah lidah. Nah, lidah ini mengandung enzim tialin dan maltase.
With the help of the salivary glands, saliva contains a digestive enzyme called amylase that already begins to digest carbohydrates in the mouth. It splits carbohydrates into smaller units.
Menjadi glukosa. Nah, inilah proses pengubahan enzim tersebut.
The ball-like mixture of food with saliva, also known as bolus, is pushed into the throat by the tongue and finally into the esophagus, which propels the bolus to the stomach. The esophageal lumen, that is, the opening inside the esophagus, is very flexible, which allows boluses of different sizes to be transported. The esophagus consists of several layers. These layers occur throughout the entire digestive tract. The 2 outer muscle layers are responsible for peristalsis. Through these 2 muscles, the bolus can be transported from the mouth to the stomach, even if the person is standing on his head.
Ini contoh gerakan peristaltik. Nah, selanjutnya makanan dari kerongkongan tersebut akan dialirkan ke dalam lambung. Nah, di dalam lambung ini terdapat 6 macam, yaitu ada fundus, ada kardia, ada corpus, ada antrum, ada pylorus, dan ada duodenum.
The stomach is composed of a similar structure to the esophagus. It has a longitudinal muscle layer on the outside. Underneath, we can find circular muscle fibers. In addition to this, there is an oblique muscle layer overlaying the mucosa. On the inside, there are rugae that allow the stomach to enlarge when food is consumed. The stomach wall contains gastric glands. They produce mucus, which is able to protect the stomach wall from the secreted gastric acid. Gastric acid is produced by simply smelling or seeing food, but also spices, and the stretching of the stomach causes the secretion, that is, the release of gastric acid. About 1 to 2 liters of gastric juice are produced per day. Since the esophagus does not have a protective mucus layer like the stomach and esophagus are separated by a sphincter. It relaxes when a bolus is pushed from the esophagus into the stomach and then contracts to prevent acid and food from going back up. Gastric juice consists, among other things, of hydrochloric acid, the enzyme pepsin, the intrinsic factor,
asam klorida, pepsin, enzim lipase, dan faktor lain.
And lipase for the digestion of fat.
Oke. Nah, asam klorida ini berfungsi untuk
In addition to nutrients, food also contains bacteria that can damage the body. The components of hydrochloric acid are able to destroy harmful bacteria.
Selanjutnya pepsinogen. Pepsinogen ini diaktifkan oleh
In addition,
asam klorida
hydrochloric
menjadi
acid converts
pepsin. Dan
pepsinogen,
pepsin
also released by the gastric
untuk
glands, into
memecah protein
pepsin.
menjadi
Pepsin
pepton.
is able to break down proteins
Nah,
in the
inilah
stomach.
protein. Dia akan dipecah oleh enzim pepsinogen dan dibantu oleh asam klorida. Nah, inilah
For a vitamin
vitamin
B12 absorption in the small intestine,
adalah
the intrinsic factor is
faktor
needed,
lain
which is produced by the gastric
yang
glands.
mana
The vitamin must
diproduksi
combine with
dari,
intrinsic factor,
asam
then it can
tadi.
be absorbed later by the small intestine. Vitamin B12 helps keep the body's
Vitamin
nerve
B12
and blood
ini
cells
berfungsi
healthy and
untuk
helps make DNA.
membantu
It also
mencegah
contains
anemia dan
gastric
membantu membuat
lipase,
DNA.
an acid-resistant enzyme for fat digestion. In the stomach, gastric lipase splits a triglyceride into a free fatty acid and a diglyceride, whereby only the free fatty acid can be absorbed by the body. More effective fat digestion takes place in the small intestine. Through gastric juice and stomach
Setelah
movements,
dari
which take
lambung,
place approximately every 20 seconds, the individual
makanan
boluses are mixed
akan
to a
kita
semi-fluid mass of partly digested
mix,
food, the so-called
yaitu
chyme.
menjadi
The chyme cannot enter the duodenum at first
Bentuknya
because there is a
seperti bubur.
sphincter at the stomach exit. The pyloric sphincter resembles the esophageal sphincter. The pyloric
inilah
sphincter
sphincter.
opens only a few millimeters, so that larger pieces remain inside the stomach. In the first section of the small
chyme
intestine,
tersebut
the
kita
duodenum, bile,
alirkan
and
ke
pancreatic
dalam
secretions are mixed with the chyme via the ampulla of Vater. Pancreatic juice contains numerous digestive proenzymes and enzymes. In order for these to do their job, a higher pH value than that in the stomach is necessary. For this reason, pancreatic juice contains sodium hydrogen carbonate. Hydrogen carbonate is able to neutralize the acid in the chyme and thus produce the optimum pH value of 7 or 8.
Nah, hormon insulin ini membantu penyerapan glukosa menjadi energi.
Pancreatic juice also contains
inilah
proenzymes. It is only through enterokinase, released by the duodenum wall, that the proenzyme trypsinogen becomes trypsin, which can split proteins and activate other trypsinogens. We also find alpha amylase, which we had already found in the mouth. It now does the rest regarding the splitting of carbohydrates, which it converts into maltose and isomaltose.
Empedu ini berfungsi untuk memecah lemak menjadi butiran-butiran yang lebih kecil sehingga dapat diserap oleh tubuh, dan pankreas ini tadi menghasilkan pita pankreas yang mengandung garam yang bersifat basa serta mengandung enzim.
Furthermore, pancreatic lipase is able to split triglycerides into two free fatty acids. The gastric lipase, as we have seen before, can produce only one free fatty acid. The pancreatic lipase can cleave triglycerides excellently because the bile breaks the fats down into tiny droplets. This is called emulsification. Numerous other enzymes are part of pancreatic juice, but these will not be explained in detail here. Bile is produced by the liver cells and transported to the gallbladder. The bile is stored in the gallbladder and finally added to the food in the duodenum via the ampulla of Vater. The pancreas also releases juice via the ampulla of Vater. The small intestine consists of three sections: duodenum, jejunum, and
Di
ileum.
dalam usus ada duodenum, jejunum, dan ileum.
The ileum continues into the large
Di dalam
intestine
usus
in the
halus
right lower
terdapat tiga
abdomen.
macam.
The duodenum and the jejunum have circular folds to increase the contact surface with the food. These circular folds extend about 1 centimeter into the lumen of the small intestine. These folds are covered with small finger-like projections called villi. Villi increase the surface considerably. Villi are about 1 millimeter long.
Villi itu berbentuk jonjot-jonjot, tonjolan kecil yang ukurannya 1 mili.
Each villus contains blood capillaries and a lymphatic capillary called lacteal, which we will see later. The nutrients, marked green here, are absorbed by the villus and transferred to the blood capillaries.
Nah, villi tadi ini diserap ke dalam kapiler darah.
Some nutrients, such as glucose, do not require a carrier. They are transported freely in the bloodstream. Other nutrients, such as iron, require transport proteins like transferrin. Fats are transported by chylomicrons, which are lipoproteins. The triglycerides to be transported are virtually enclosed in the lipoprotein.
Dan ada triglycerida dan kolesterol.
Chylomicrons and triglycerides are then transported through the lacteal of the villus. Each villus is covered by even smaller microvilli. They multiply the intestinal surface considerably. The microvilli absorb nutrients and transport them to the inside. The last part of the small intestine is the ileum. It does not have, unlike the duodenum and jejunum, circular folds. The ileum absorbs electrolytes, such as calcium, for building bones, hair, and teeth. Trace elements, such as zinc, for sperm production and the immune system.
Mineral, zinc, vitamin B12,
vitamins such as B12 for the formation and maturation of red blood cells, and remaining bile acid, which is transported back to the liver via the bloodstream.
Nah, di sini juga terjadi
As with the esophagus, the food is transported by peristalsis. In contrast, segmentation contractions serve to mix the chyme, which is shown here in yellow and red, to make it easier to see the mixing process.
Berbentuk bubur yang berwarna kuning dan merah, lalu dicampur, diubah menjadi unit yang lebih kecil, dan hasil
the large intestine is thicker than the small intestine. It is about 1 meter long and surrounds the small intestine. The small intestine is connected to the large intestine via the Bowling's valve. It opens when chyme is to pass from the small intestine to the large intestine. The large intestine does not have any villi like the small intestine, because most digestible substances have already been absorbed in the small intestine. However, the large intestine has an estimated 100 billion bacteria inside. They are important for many other tasks, such as the production of vitamins and the decomposition of fiber for the body's energy production. Many of these bacteria are an important part of the immune system by killing harmful germs. Through peristalsis, the chyme is transported from the ascending colon to the transverse colon to the descending colon. On its way through the large intestine, water is removed from the chyme,
kolon ascendens
Furthermore,
atau naik,
mucus is
kolon
added for proper
termversum atau
excretion
mendatar,
of
dan
waste.
kolon descendens.
Substances that cannot be absorbed through the small intestine or the large intestine remain in the rectum and are finally excreted through the anus.
Nachaim tadi yang sudah dari usus besar kita alirkan ke dalam rektum. Nah, di rektum ini merupakan tempat penyimpanan sementara pada feses. Nah, setelah dari rektum yang tadi kita alirkan ke dalam anus, dan di anus terjadilah proses pembuangan yang sudah tidak dibutuhkan oleh
kulit
tubuh.
bayi 30% lebih tipis dari kulit kita,
Sekian
Pak.
dari
Serius?
saya.
Pakai ini, Johnson's
Lebih
Milk
dan
Plus
kurangnya
Rice
mohon
baru 2
dimaafkan.
kali milk proteins.
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.